Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Economic Matters meeting of the new year. So starting us off, I will call us to order, and now we go into the roll call. Takia, you take that, correct? Or do I take that?
No, you take it.
All right. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Present.
Alderman Savage?
Present.
And I am also present. Next, can I get an approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. So first off, approval of our minutes from our previous meeting. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes for the, is this correct, the November 10th meeting?
That is correct. We did not meet in December.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. So I hope you guys have got an opportunity to read the two pieces of legislation before us today. I'm actually very excited about these, the small cell system. I have invited Dr. Nash to discuss Ordinance 2920, allowing the building of small cell systems in Annapolis and the regulations surrounding them. Do we have Dr. Nash here? Excellent. Good evening, Dr. Nash. So I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit of the purpose of the small cells guidelines that you have sent out to me earlier. I've read the staff report and I am very excited about this program. I also would want to welcome one of the bill's co-sponsors, Alderwoman Ellie Tierney, who has just signed on.
Okay, sure. So this is a technology that will enable cell phone companies, Verizon, AT&T, et cetera, to eventually move to 5G technology, which is faster broadband. And it will also improve their 4G, especially their video, the speed it takes to watch a video, which is eating up a lot of broadband right now. These are systems that have to go pretty close to one another because of their frequencies are small. They have to go close to the houses and close to one another. So that gives us a design challenge. The FCC has put a lot of restrictions in place about how much we can regulate these. Our regulations have to be technically feasible. There's also a shot clock for approvals, which will make it tricky in our historic district. And there are guidelines for fees, which are a lot lower than the ones I've proposed, but I have followed Anne Arundel County's fees and fine schedule. So I think we will be able to justify our higher fee for the applications. So these are new antennas and equipment boxes that would need to go onto hopefully existing poles. In some cases, you might need to replace a pole with a higher pole or a stronger pole. It's pretty difficult for the companies to co-locate, which means put all of their equipment on one pole. That would in some ways be less attractive than just having them on one pole, but there would be a benefit on there'd be fewer of them, but it's kind of a trade-off, but they don't really like to co-locate. So
They don't like working together.
No, they don't. And they also have certain restrictions based on what pole they're using, if they're using a utility company's pole, things like that. So we've been working on these guidelines for a while, at least since July is the one I posted online, and then I just now sent an updated version to the three of you. I can send it to you as well, Alderwoman. And that is taking into some comments from the Planning Commission and taking in some comments from AT&T. We're trying to make sure our guidelines can be implemented so we can do our best to make sure that there's a certain aesthetic standard that's going to be in play because, these are potentially can be very big and everywhere and not exactly what we would want to see around town. So that kind of summarizes that. The Planning Commission reviewed the ordinance. They actually took some text out of the ordinance and wanted that to go into the guidelines and made the ordinance itself pretty straightforward. And then the real work is really going to be the guidelines and making sure we have all of the technological information right and make it as strong as we can for the aesthetics that we're within the FCC allowance of what we can regulate.
All right. So do any of my colleagues have any questions for Dr. Nash? Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Alderman. Dr. Nash, I understand the need for the Historic Preservation Commission to weigh in. Well, first of all, let me back up. A few years ago, I think it was AT&T who approached us. This was during Alderman Pfeiffer's tenure, I believe. I'm not sure whether he was still an alderman or had left the council, but we met with a company, and I think it was AT&T, about putting these very similar antennas on existing poles. So how does that technology differ from the technology that's being proposed in this small cell technology legislation?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, this is 5G technology, so it is a little bit newer. It might have been similar to what they were proposing in the past. I don't know what that was exactly, but because these are fairly new. I mean, that might have been the 5G, because I think what's happened is that there have been a lot of court battles between cell phone companies in different jurisdictions. And I think that has probably delayed the implementation a little bit. I mean, you will see these in Anne Arundel County now. So they are out there, and that it's possible that that's what meeting was about. But we've been trying to figure out the best way to deal with these. I mean, it's been a couple of years since I've been working on it. So it's been a long process.
I do recall seeing some of them, and not a lot. And I'm trying to think of where it may have been. And I want to think maybe outside of the city, towards the Bay Ridge or Arundel on the Bay, maybe areas. But it was, like you said, it was some time ago. My other question has to do with the carve out for the guidelines for the historic district, and what is different there that would not be appropriate for all of the city.
Well, the review itself is a little different, since we would need it to go to the Historic Preservation Commission. Also, I suspect that the majority of the small cell antennas will actually be in the historic district, because that is where there's the most density in terms of users. So I hope we can have a nice aesthetic throughout the city, but we might want them to look a certain way downtown, but look another way in other parts of the city that is also blends into the context, whatever that context is. But so far in the guidelines, the main difference is that the application process itself. So just having to go to the HPC for approval.
Okay. And would that approval be for single cells or for the city as a whole, or at least the historic district as a whole?
Well, No, we would hope that Verizon would come in with a pack of applications for, 50 poles or whatever they're going to do and have that approved as a package.
Okay.
Now, how the 5G technology works is essentially just one pole is functionally useless because of the very small wireless signal that they give out. Is that correct, Dr. Nash?
That's right. So they're going to want to do a lot of these at a time.
Okay.
But different carriers will want them in different locations. And we'll have a kind of a first come, first serve policy for the carriers. So, they'll be in trying to get their applications in for the best spots.
Alderman Savage, I saw you had a question, but if you don't mind, I would like to just ask a quick technological question about this to Dr. Nash. But Dr. Nash, just for the clarification of anyone watching and just my own final clarification, 5G is different than traditional wireless that we would pick up on our laptops. This is a mobile technology only, correct? So for things like cell phones, tablets.
It is a mobile technology. I don't know how it's different than, the only thing I know that is different from 4G is that it's faster. And so, that's pretty much the extent of my technological explanation of the difference. But it's a different kind of antenna. It's different equipment. And it, it works a little bit differently, but I think otherwise it's pretty much the same as 4G or 3G technology.
Which is applied to mobile devices such as tablets and cell phones. Okay. Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I didn't have any problems with the legislation as it's written or any questions. I think it's very thorough. My only question, I guess, is more about the Planning Commission's recommendations. It looks like they did have their first recommendation was to make a change so that I guess we get to that with the next, it has to do with the fees. So I guess that'll wait till the next resolution because we're still on the ordinance, I believe. So I guess regarding the ordinance, what they recommended was that essentially certain provisions get stricken and that we just substitute that it's up to P&Z to make the regulations based on the policies that we've written in the ordinance. And I'm still generally a little hesitant to do that until we have a process in place where we have a clear process in place where we are required to post the regulations before they take effect and have a council review of that. And I don't think we have anything in place yet. I think from Rules and Government, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Chair, from Rules and Government, I think we may have spoke with the law office about that general idea. I know Alderman Arnett's been asking about that. So that's my only hesitation, but I guess my question in that regard for you, Dr. Nash, would be, was there any, so I'm guessing your department put together the underlying ordinance. What's the department's thoughts on that recommendation from the Planning Commission? Does that remove something that you feel like needs to be in the code versus simply regulation?
No, I was happy with what they did, and mainly because I understand the concern, generally speaking, about the code versus regulations. But in this case, for a technology that changes so quickly, I think it makes sense to have guidelines that are more robust, that can be updated quicker. And the guidelines itself, they're are pretty long. I don't really want that much to go into the code. So it kind of made sense to me to try and keep the code simple. Let's put all of the technical, complicated things that could change very quickly into the guidelines. So I was okay with that direction.
Yeah, I see the guidelines are rather long. 30 pages, but still, certainly no need to take up the whole code with all of these. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Alderwoman Tierney, as our guest, do you have any questions for Dr. Nash or anything you would like to say on the legislation?
Yes, I wore my Rachel Maddow glasses just for the occasion. Yes, I co-sponsored mostly, as Dr. Nash said, because of the density of the dwellings in the historic district, but also as sort of the coordination possibly between the Naval Academy and the State House complexes. I don't know, just to sort of figure out how, we are sort of in ground zero in that respect. But I think what this is going to bring up another situation in how much do we put in the code, and you just spoke to that, how much do we put in the code versus what we don't put in the code, and that involves all the I can't say this word, specificity. Well, you know what I mean. I mean, it's subject to change, but I guess use tables and that kind of stuff should be in the code. And I guess that's what the Planning Commission attempted to address is the different uses or applications.
Right. They kept that in the code.
They kept that in the code, and that makes sense. And so I'm just saying that's going to bring up a discussion. I know my colleague Alderman Arnett has there's issues concurrent with this. There is I think he's working on legislation as far as regulations and review of regulations. So that is going to be sort of intertwined with this. As far as the historic district, I'll be the first one to say I'm not really sure what HPC is going to be looking at. I mean, I don't know what these structures are, and I don't know. I mean, one could argue that this is a utility. It could be life safety. So therefore, what is what I'm saying? What kind of what can they review? And then lastly, my concern is not making it proprietary. I saw you mentioned AT&T, and then somehow I came across this letter from Comcast, with their, stuff. And I'm sure, Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, whatever, will have their comments. And, I'm just fearful that we don't make it too proprietary and we keep it open-ended to keep the competitiveness, if you will. So those are just my general comments, I guess they are. It's a big deal.
From my understanding of the legislation, I don't think it puts any one of the wireless carriers above the other for preference. Dr. Nash, if you could, would this legislation open up the possibility of using our public infrastructure for this, or do the service providers need to install everything on their own? Like, could they put it on a 5G tower on a light post downtown, for example?
They can go on some utility poles, but the city doesn't own, the city owns some of our light poles, but not all of our light poles. And I think they would be putting them mostly on BG and E equipment, which is another constraint because there's certain things BG and E will or won't let the carriers do. So that's another issue. There's also an issue of height of poles. We really don't want them to come in with new poles that are a lot higher than what is there now. We limited it to 10%. It couldn't be more than 10% higher than what is there now, but they are kind of pushing back and saying that that's not enough. But I'm kind of reluctant to start having 50, 60 foot poles in the historic district. So
I would share that reluctance.
Yeah, I think we'll put these out. I suspect there might be a little push and pull from the carriers if there's something in there that they just can't comply with. We'll have to think about that. But I'm inclined to be pretty careful at this point and see what we can have them comply with.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to interject on that because it is crazy a lack of coordination between BG&E and the cable companies. I mean, you've seen it. Okay, let me see if I can explain this well enough. You have a BG&E pole, right? And then with their stuff, and then the carrier comes in and they want to do something. They will just, they don't touch each other, and they will just put a stub and then wire off of that. So if you look downtown, you'll see these poles with a piece of pole attached to it with all of these lines. And so that lack of coordination is something that has to be addressed, number one. And number two is we really do, and I think I've spoke to you before about the cleanup of these cables, these as they are right now. You know what I mean? They're all, walk around the historic district and they're all wrapped around like crazy. So we don't want that to continue. But I in all honesty, BG&E, it can be really, there's a word for it, but that lack of coordination, not mine, is got to be addressed. I think you know that, Sally.
Yeah, that's definitely a tricky part of it. Yeah. There is some language in here about removing antenna and equipment boxes that are no longer in use, which I think is really important, because we don't want them just sitting up there and not even being used, So I think that's a good thing to have in there, which will help a little bit eventually with the letter.
Where is that, Sally? I missed that. I'm sorry, because that's super important. That's in the guidelines, actually. Oh, okay.
Alderman Savage, I see you had a question.
Yeah, just going back to the Planning Commission comments. I don't see, they're not actually in true amendment form. So, I don't think it'd be easy for us to create amendments on the fly this evening. I think we should somehow, I don't know if this would be best coming from the law office or Ms. Green or Dr. Nash, but I think let them know that if they develop recommendations, they might as well get the law office to draft actual amendments that can get entered into our system. I think it'd be a lot easier for us to review. As in their revised ordinance that they have at the end of their report, they don't show the strikeouts. And I know they said they did that, I think, for ease of viewing. But I've noticed just comparing some of them, if you go down to page 8, lines 1 and 2, that's not actually, it says the system that ceases operation for a period of 12 consecutive months is considered abandoned and must be removed within 90 days. It looks like the Planning Commission actually recommended striking that. I don't see that reflected in their revised language. I don't know, Ms. Leonard, I see you on the call here. Do you have any information? I don't think you work with the Planning Commission, but maybe you have any information from the law office, or Dr. Nash. I don't know if you have any information on that.
I think I would be happy to work with law office to get these into amendment form.
Alderman Savage, I've been working on the lease guideline end of it, but I honestly haven't been that involved in the ordinance at this point. So I'd have to check base with others in my office as to what happened there. But I'm happy to help Sally or Dr. Nash remedy that as needed.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any of my other colleagues have questions for Dr. Nash? Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got tongue-tied.
That's okay. And my question was similar to Alderman Savage's question, which was about the Planning Commission's recommendations. And I'm looking at the actual legislation where it appears they have included their amendments in bold capitals, whereas the new language is simply in all caps. Sally, am I reading this correctly?
That's right.
Okay, so what we're seeing are the recommendations embedded, the Planning Commission's recommendations embedded. I agree with Alderman Savage that we need greater clarification. And if these are to be amended, then we have to have the language to submit, appropriate language to submit them as amendments. And it looks like there's at least 2, if not more, throughout. So I would make a motion that we postpone action on this legislation until we get the Planning Commission's recommendations so that we can look at them and possibly adopt them as amendments.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second that. Is there any time crunch on this?
Alderman Tierney, I see you have a question for discussion.
Yeah, I have a comment, and I'm not sure who handles this, but this is the second time, at least today, that I've looked at Planning Commission's reviews. It was Tamara Brooks on adequate facilities, the transportation. They have been rewriting the legislation in lieu of itemizing amendments. And I know that's probably easier when you have a substantial amount of revisions, is to just rewrite it. But now we're asking them to unravel that and put it in amendment form. So we should just give them a heads up that it creates more work for both of us, I guess. You know what I mean? I don't know who tells them that, or
right. Well, it's that they write their own findings, and so they do it in a way that makes sense to them. But I will try to work with them.
Yeah.
And it is hard when they're making. If it's small, it's easy for me to capture the amendments. But when they're really rewriting things, it's sometimes I am not sure what to do. So, but I will work with them in the future on that.
Okay. Well,
but there's not really a time crunch. I mean, the carriers are eager to get going, but I don't think we should rush.
I would agree with that sentiment. So, having a motion and a second on yes, Alderman Savage. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. Just another. As I'm just reading through this again, I mean, because some of the things they're striking, recommending be stricken. I don't know. It seems like some of this might be valuable to have written in a code as opposed to just a regulation. And because I get that a lot of the details you want to have in the guidelines, but some of the stuff written, especially in this section, I'm looking at on page 6 of the original legislation, lines 22, 23. It's the standards for the small cell systems. And it just seems like a lot of the stuff isn't necessarily that mundane, super detailed things you'd see in the guidelines. It's defining things about having a engineer certify and submit information when regarding wind load. And I don't know. I just think it might be worthwhile to have some things in the code that we really want to emphasize with the companies, that these are really important. And granted, I think things that we figure aren't going to really necessarily need to be changed in the future with future tech updates. But I completely understand that you don't want to have to come back to council every time these things change. But I think there's certainly a balance because, since Alderman Tierney brought it up, I was concerned for the same reason with the transportation, that adequate public facility, is that it took a lot of the guts out of the ordinance and put it all in the hands of planning and zoning. And while I think the department's entirely capable of that, it's just a shift that in how we do things. And I think we also, but beyond that, again, I think from a elected official standpoint, we do think it's helpful to have certain things listed in the code that we definitely want to stand behind and set standards for. Don, I'm sorry, Dr. Nash, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here with all this. I do think there's still value in going in this direction. It's just, I think we need to find a nice balance. Yeah, because we already do that with some of our other regs, like the stormwater and the forest conservation. A lot of that's in there.
And like the historic district design guidelines.
Yeah, right.
Which is kind of what I was thinking these were more like. But, you know, I totally get what you're saying. So it's, it might be easier when we come back with the planning commission amendments for you to say this one yes, this one no, this one yes.
Right. Okay.
So having a motion and a second for postponing action on this piece of legislation before the committee, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor on postponing action on this piece of legislation, resolution, hold on, 4120, say aye.
Aye.
It's 029.
021. I'm sorry, I was looking at the fees. My apologies. Take two. All those in favor of postponing action on 02920, say aye.
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 All right. And Takia, could you add me as a co-sponsor to 02920 as well? I do want to see the amendments, but I am very excited about this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, and Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Again, I also just wanted to thank Dr. Nash and your staff for putting these guidelines together. It's very, well, the legislation and the guidelines are very thorough, and they addressed all the concerns that I have heard from constituents in terms of, you know, I think that notification and that kind of thing.
Great.
So thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, and our next two items on the agenda are all related to the small cell system. So I think we will likely delay it until we can see the action together. But Dr. Nash, would you mind explaining a little bit on Resolution 4120, the small cell system fees?
Right. Well, these fees are the same as what the county is charging. They're about a order of magnitude of 10 bigger than what the FCC tells us we can charge. So we will see. But I feel you have to justify to the FCC if you have a higher fee. And I think we can do that based on, you know, the same things that the county used. So and I feel like it's going to be a lot of work, and that's what the fee goes to, is our time. So to me, that makes it justified.
So there is precedent for this in other jurisdictions then.
Mm-hmm.
And Alderwoman Finlayson, I see you have a question, but I'm going to do my chairman's privilege one more time. Would you mind explaining, are the fees listed? Is that per cell unit or is that per application?
For each, think of it as for each pole.
Okay. So it would be, for example, for the installation of a structure, it would be a $4,000 fee per structure installed. Excellent. Thank you. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, Dr. Nash, the question I was going to ask is very similar. The $4,000, is that for the erection of a pole and the monitoring box, or is that just for the small system antenna, I guess it's called?
It's just for installation of the antenna. They might have to replace a pole, but they would pay for that separately.
So the 2,100 is for the replacement of their antenna again?
Yeah.
And then the fee under, that's on page 2, the $2,000 fee is for, tell me what that is for.
That's for a more minor modification of something that's already existing.
So will they be able to use existing antennae with the new technology, or they will have to eliminate what's already there?
They will either add or eliminate what's there and add more, so that it's completely new equipment that's needed. New antenna and new equipment boxes.
Okay. Then tell me what the last item on the fee schedule is.
So this is even lower impact change where the size of the equipment box and the system is actually getting smaller.
Okay, so again, this equipment is all new equipment since this is a whole new program. So,
everyone's going to be paying the $4,000 at first.
Okay, so this is for down the line when the equipment has been installed for some time and there needs to be replacements of that equipment.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Savage, you still have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and I probably should have asked this in the last legislation, but, and I apologize if I missed this, but so these are being placed on the utility poles, but are they owned by the utility companies? Are any of them owned by the city?
Well, there might be a pole they can use that is owned by the city.
Okay, and the fees are the same no matter whose pole?
Well, that's how I would like it to be. The carriers would like this to not apply to non-city owned poles, but I would like it to apply to all poles.
Okay. And in terms of the fee, so the fees, I understand they're to cover the city costs, staff costs. Are there any annual costs in terms of staff? Like, I'm just wondering if we need to have an annual fee of any kind.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anything that wouldn't necessarily be covered by this.
Okay. Are we even allowed to have annual fees on these?
I don't know, probably not, but
Okay.
we do license them, but is Ashley still on? I don't think we charge for the licensing. I think that's just part of the application. Is that right? Ashley, do you know?
Yes, I believe that is correct because it's the same way that works with like the cable and the Verizon franchises. They have to pay us for services in other ways, like how they pay for, the plan review, but generally there's not like an annual fee for them having it in the city.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you. Dr. Nash, I need clarification. Did you say that you would like to have a fee for poles that are not city-owned poles?
Yes, so I would like the guidelines and the installation fees to be applied anytime they are putting up new equipment, no matter where it is.
So would we have to get permission from the owner of the poles in order to permit use of their poles?
The carriers would need to show that they have approval from BGE or whoever to place the equipment.
Okay, so that's the responsibility, one of the responsibilities of the carrier. Okay. Okay, so that kind of does explain the manpower that's going to be needed to follow up with and keep track of all of this.
Yes.
If there's another owner of the pole. Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Yeah, related to that is, so for example, that's the interface between the state and the city. For example, around State Circle, if you have to tie into a pole on one side of the street that's state property versus the city, and even, I guess, on Hanover Street or something where you're adjacent to the Naval Academy, how does that work as far as charging fees? Or am I complicating things?
I'm not sure I know exactly. That's a good question. I think I can do some research on that and get back to you with more.
I mean, if that situation exists, I just assume it would. But
I know there's situations where when the installations are going to be near the Navy Academy facility, they would like to review those.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it got it into the Planning Commission amendments or not, but that is an amendment that our Naval Facility Rep proposed, adding that. So to make sure that they have the opportunity to review.
How come we never get to review their stuff? No. Sorry.
It goes one way, Ellie.
I know.
All right. Yes, Alderman Finlays.
Dr. Nash, is the Naval Academy embracing this 5G technology, or are they going to use ours?
No, they will have their own, but they are a little behind us in terms of figuring out exactly how they're going to allow it and where. Because there's even more concerns about, security and signal interference.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So colleagues, given that this is all going to be connected to the primary ordinance, I do believe it would be wise to wait and see on any amendments given to the first ordinance. So are we all comfortable doing will someone be comfortable seconding my motion to delay action on this until we get those amendments?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a recommendation that we postpone action.
All right. Alderman Savage seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Sorry, question about Mr. Chair. So just before we get off this topic, before we vote, I guess, again, Dr. Nash, one of the recommendations from the Planning Commission was to have these fees be adjusted for inflation on an annual basis. So that's another amendment I think we should get.
Okay, I will add that.
Next time.
Good point. Right.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Is a fine amendment. Good call. So all those in favor of postponing, show of hands. Aye. Passes unanimously. And our final piece of legislation for tonight is R4220, small cell system fines. Dr. Nash, this one seems pretty simple. Could you give an example of some of the violations that could cause a fine on these small cell systems?
Well, the main one that comes to mind is leaving equipment up when it's no longer functioning. That would be the one I'm mostly concerned about. But it could be anything if they are installed without a permit or they change something without a permit, any kind of related offense like that.
Okay. Do any of my colleagues have questions on this final piece of legislation before us? Okay, so hearing none, I would again recommend that we postpone action on this until we get all the amendments written out for the primary legislation. So do I have a motion to delay action?
Mr. Chair, I'll move recommendation to postpone action on R4220.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All right. And that concludes our agenda for the night. General discussion. Do we have anyone representing economic development to give us an update?
Yes, they're on.
Excellent. Excellent. Hope, why don't you start us off and then, yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Steve is here now, so I think he was going to give you a rundown of our updates from the past couple months.
Oh, excellent, Steve. I can't see you. I don't have your camera on, brother.
There he is.
Excellent.
Hi, good to see everybody. And as Hope was saying, we haven't met in some time, so I'll just quickly give some highlights from the last couple of months, and then we can talk a little bit about what we're working on in present day. In the month of November, we had one ribbon cutting We promoted our small business recovery hub. We had 2 industry calls with the mayor. The first on the 20th was a call with the restaurants, and it focused on capacity restrictions and tent guidelines. The second call was on the 24th, and we talked about Midnight Madness planning, and specifically, we focused on the rules of the road for a safe holiday shopping experience. In November, we managed 35 inquiries from businesses, and we sent out restaurant grant information and COVID-19 guidelines from Anne Arundel County. We work with the Downtown Annapolis Partnership on not only Midnight Madness planning, but also holiday decoration planning. And that's high level kind of, our activity for November. In December, we had 1 ribbon cutting. We had 1 virtual site visit. We had a pre-application meeting. Again, we promoted our small business recovery hub. We managed 36 inquiries from businesses. We assisted the mayor's office in 3 shop local ads that were placed with the Capital Gazette to help promote Midnight Madness retailers. And we kicked off the Annapolis Curbside and Carryout website. We work with the Office of Emergency Management on an Economic Development Administration grant application that we hope will help bring in some funds to support the city dock revitalization effort. And for this month thus far, we've had 1 ribbon cutting. And as you probably have seen, the governor has proposed a Relief Act of 2021 for the Maryland General Assembly session. We've analyzed that, and we are currently planning a town hall with the Small Business Development Center to discuss PPP loans now that the SBA has recently come out with their guidelines. We're also working to ensure that Annapolis business owners have information that they need given the high level of concern regarding the recent protests. And so we've been, spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we're serving as a good conduit of information. Hope can talk a little bit more about that. So that's just a quick snapshot of, what's happened the last couple of months and, what's on our plate right now. And Hope, did you have anything else to add?
Okay, so in terms of the concerns that our local businesses are having about potential demonstrations in Annapolis Sunday through inauguration, we did send an email out to the heads of our business districts. Eric received it, and thank you, Eric, for sending it along as well. So we let them know that our police and OEM are currently coordinating with local, state, and federal agencies to ensure public safety, but at this moment, there's no specific or credible threat. So we're encouraging people, if they see anything suspicious, to call 911. And most of all, we want everybody to download the Prepare Me Annapolis app. It's available in Google Play or the Apple Store, and that's how OEM will communicate with people during emergencies. Also, we have new Shop, Dine, Stay Local bumper stickers, and those are available at the Visitor Center for people to pick up. We want to keep encouraging everybody to spend their money locally. And I think that, and also the Small Business Recovery Program. Please keep promoting that. That will continue even after COVID as a way of just encouraging people to still shop local. So that is it for now.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart and Mr. Rice. I do want to say before we get into questions, I have been very strongly promoting our takeout, carry-out menu website that we have created. It is a fantastic resource. I've had some constituents reach out to me and thank me for sharing it out on social media. And I would encourage my colleagues to do so if you have not already. It's a great way to find some amazing dining in our city. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Rice, could you tell us what the new businesses are? So, unless you've already sent us a list of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so in November, we had a ribbon cutting for Dangerously Delicious Pies. In December.
And their location?
They're on West Street.
Okay.
And in December, we had a ribbon cutting for Dream Baby Decor. That's in the Design District. And let's see, the one that we had this month, it was for Annapolis International Market. That's also on West Street.
Okay.
And I'm also happy to send you all. Yeah, happy to send you all the new and expanding business list. It's available on our website, so I can send that to you so you can see what happened throughout the year.
That would be great. And if you could indicate, if it's not too much work, what ward they sit in, I think that might be helpful for the alderman also.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Do any of my other colleagues have questions for Stephen or Hope? Seeing none. Yes, Alderwoman Tierney.
Yeah, just was the Red Octopus tattoo parlor.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I just thought, how brave is it to open up a tattoo parlor in the middle of a pandemic? But they, I don't know if they had a grand opening or not. They just have open and.
Not yet. Yeah, we're still waiting for their use permit to be finalized.
Oops.
Oh, no, they're allowed to be open. Oh, they're allowed to be open. It's just sometimes they're allowed to be open, but there's still some final steps before the use permit. So,
do you have I know I'm asked this and I should know, but are we keeping a list of closures due to the pandemic? Business closures or?
So we don't have a list of closures now, and the closures are they're a tough nugget or tough nut to crack because some of the closures are temporary, some are permanent, and some are wait and see.
Right, I understand.
So I think post-COVID, we'll be able to do a better kind of survey and also kind of go door to door, get a sense of who is coming back or who might come back. But a lot of businesses and business owners are just up in the air and waiting for the dust to settle. If hopefully in a couple of months, as when March comes around, March, April, as it starts to get warmer and more people have gotten their shots, the opportunity for businesses will increase, more people will be out, and there will be more viability. But I think that a lot of the business owners I've talked to are just waiting for warmer weather and more people to get vaccinated.
Yeah, and I have to say you should be commended on the fact that there haven't been as many closures as there could be, specifically with the restaurants downtown and elsewhere.
This former bartender agrees. All right, colleagues, any further questions? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to Mr. Eric Evans, an update from the Downtown Partnership. How are you, Mr. Evans?
Great, thank you guys for having me here. And just to kind of follow up on Ellie's question real quick is, I do track businesses that close downtown. It's not an exact science because it's really what I can visually see. No one has to give a report saying that they closed. But I do the best I can to kind of have that so we have a complete picture of how many open and how many close each year, so we can kind of gauge the health of our community, business community. A couple of things that we've been working on since we've last met, just to let you guys know, is the Annapolis Arts District made a donation to the Stanton Center at Christmas time. We donated about $2,500 worth of art supplies for the kids there for art classes. We're also providing art instruction with art teachers that can do virtual classes. So some of the kids will take classes spaced out inside the gym. Some kids will do it from home, depending on, whether or not they have COVID issues or whatever else is going on. So that was a nice thing that we were able to do. We've also recently put up artistic bike racks, went up in December at the Stanton Community Center. So the kids there will have bike racks to be able to put their bikes at. That's in addition to 3 other bike racks that went up already along West Street that we put up this fall. Another one scheduled to go up as soon as it gets through HPC on West Street. And we have 2 that we're waiting for county approval to give to the Boys and Girls Club out at the Bates Legacy Center. We've also recently done some beautification projects downtown. We re-landscaped Veterans Circle downtown. We did a small landscaping project on Westgate Circle, and we did a landscaping project on the corner of Northwest and Calvert Street. We also did a landscaping project around God's Court Garage this fall. So we've done almost $20,000 worth of beautification landscaping projects downtown this fall. December, as you can imagine, was mostly focused on Midnight Madness events downtown, which was up in the air and changing from week to week, day to day, depending on COVID. And I was happy we were able to get a version of it out there. We also, instead of having it just as an in-person event, it was also a virtual event. We did a gift card promotion. We have links to businesses downtown that sell gift cards online, and we heavily promote it on social media for people to shop and buy gift cards online as an alternative way to support local. We also worked with the city's Economic Development Office to promote open late shopping. We were able to provide some flags and signage to businesses to promote that, and then Downtown Annapolis Partnership subsidized that with social media marketing. The Christmas decorations downtown, we partnered with the city on that this year for the first time, and I must say we got tons of positive feedback on the holiday decorations and from both residents and businesses. Some of these decorations that are not Christmas specific will kind of stay on a little bit through the winter months just to put a little cheer downtown. So you'll see some of the white lights and some of the trees remaining on through the winter, and we'll turn them up some springtime. Christmas was difficult downtown and probably for most small retailers around the city. I don't think it was as bad as some retailers were fearing it would be, but it doesn't mean necessarily that it was good. The restaurants have had a difficult time in December with being at 25%, some weeks being closed and reopening. And anytime you got to just keep closing and reopening your business, it puts some additional stresses on the businesses. Now that January is here and COVID doesn't seem to be letting up, there's quite a few businesses downtown that are closing like Monday through Wednesday. There's a few that have decided to take January off just because the volume of business isn't there. So it's definitely still a tough time for them. Restaurant Week is an event that we typically promote during this time to help businesses because it's slow this time of year when there's no COVID. I like to roll that out as soon as possible, but when restaurants are 25% capacity, you really can't do that. As soon as we get them up a little bit, we will roll that out. And we'll probably add a carry-out component if the restaurants agree, but still a little early to tell how that event's going to roll out this year. As Stephen Ryson mentioned, spent a lot of time trying to calm nerves the last couple of days since state houses have been in the press a lot about potential events happening over the next week. And luckily, Annapolis seems to be off most people's radar. We've been closely trying to promote a lot of different training classes during the month of January for businesses since it's a quiet month. There's training classes available almost every day online through SCORE and Small Business Administration. So we've been sharing those this month. And I think, businesses are really just kind of focused right now on trying to figure out what to do in the new year, closely watching how vaccines are being distributed. What's the chances of things opening up more in the new year? This weekend, or this Friday, we're having a meeting with the city and businesses to talk about the city dock. I think a lot of them are excited yet nervous about what that brings. People like to see some positive changes, but they also get nervous about long-term construction projects. So I would encourage the council to consider marketing funds for businesses during this time. If anyone was around in 1995 when they re-bricked Main Street, we did lose a lot of businesses during that construction period. And now we're going to do the garage first, then City Dock, then the re-brick Main Street. We're also going to be doing resiliency along Compromise Street. All of these projects are needed, but when you have multi-year construction projects in front of your business, it's going to make it very tough for some of them to survive. So any planning we could do, council's in on budgeting that would allow us to have some funds for that would be extremely appreciated. Recovery zones, this past year were great for the businesses, especially for the restaurants. They've been trying to keep them going as long as they can through the winter. Whenever we have a moderately warm day, it gets in the 50s, people are outside eating when typical year they would not be done. So it's good to see those continuing on for those who are able to do it. You guys have any questions? I'm here for you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Eric. And we know you're always here for us, so thank you. You mentioned marketing funds for the businesses, which I would totally support. My question is, have we yet seen a plan for parking and for encouraging patrons to visit businesses downtown during the various construction projects?
I think the parking plan is probably a work in progress, still at this point for what it would be.
I think we all see the value of getting that in the hands of the businesses and their constituents as soon as possible, so that they will know that the businesses have not gone away and that there is a plan in place. When we have our next presentation on the plan, then we have to be reminded or remind ourselves to ask the question and to make sure that plan is forthcoming sooner rather than later.
I would agree. It's probably the most important thing to plan outside of actual construction is how do we handle parking and positive messaging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for keeping us focused.
And my other colleagues have questions? Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah. Federal House, Eric, do you have the latest on them? I thought they were open. They have these really cool heaters on their tables and stuff outside, but the last couple of days it's been just, have they decided to close for a while?
They're only open Thursday through Sunday. Matter of fact, after there was questions about Pinckney Street the other week, on one of our Monday calls, I went down there the following day, and the only restaurant that was open is Iron Rooster on a Tuesday. So that's just kind of how quiet it is, even down there in Ground Zero, where businesses, when the weather's nice, are traditionally most successful. Middleton's is closed Monday and Tuesday. Market House and Fed House are closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Harvest was closed Monday and Tuesday. So there's a lot of closures down there.
Yeah. I also just wanted to say, Alderwoman Finlayson, that point is excellent. And I understand, because I had asked the same question, that out of this consortium of all these companies, there's one called VIA, who does the mobility solutions, and they are the ones that are tasked with doing this logistics that you speak of, so that we have alternate parking during construction. They're tasked with developing that plan because that's their specialty, I guess. But it's a very valid concern to get it as soon as possible so that there's not anxiety. I believe there's a meeting Friday afternoon with the City Dock Action Committee, Eileen Fogarty, and the businesses to discuss this pre-development agreement.
All right. Do we have any further questions? Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for the update and for joining us tonight. We look forward to continuing to work with you during this unprecedentedly difficult time for our small business community in Annapolis. So with that concluded, I believe that is the final point of our agenda, unless any of my colleagues have anything else they would like to add to the general discussion. Seeing none, do I have a motion to conclude our meeting?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, and stay safe out there.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You too.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.